Hey Cody, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Congratulations on the nomination. That's God, this I've been haunted by this movie ever since I saw it. I've seen it, I think like three times now. And I feel like every time I watch it, I find something entirely new about it. And you are so mysterious to me, and you are so like there are certain things I was like, I want to know super specific things, but I also don't want to know super specific things.
Mm,
I think that's something that we sort of as a I guess an entertainment culture, we need to know everything, and I love that
yes.
the movie doesn't do that for you. And
Thank you for saying all of this. First of all, the first
yeah,
first comment that it haunted you. That's
that's
perfect. That's kind of what we want, and that's what I don't know if that's actually what we wanted, but it's what turned out happening to people. It would really stick with them, and
mm-hmm.
whether they wanted to or not, they're like thinking about it, thinking about it, thinking about it. And obviously, there's this whole kind of quality to the film that it recontextualizes itself within like the final act. So it
Mm-hmm.
invites you to watch it again and have answer at least 30% of those questions for yourself.
Yeah.
Um, but if anything, it probably just arises more questions. Um, and yeah, I mean, I again also really appreciate the fact that yes, you acknowledge the truth that you want to know every little nitty gritty thing. You want to know how the magic tricks are done, but in the same breath, you want to leave it a magic trick.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what
and
makes it
that's
special. Yeah.
yeah, and I'm more than willing to entertain, going into every little one of those avenues uh, with a pinch of salt. Like I always,
Mm-hmm.
as much as I am the person who played the character, as much as I am the person who was guided by Jane Campion and her understanding of the portrayal of the character, we are probably the closest things to that character.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I, at the end of the day, and Jane, if I may speak on behalf of her, are just someone that is portraying the ambiguity and that kind of impression of and the mold of that character.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess in another way, I'm saying that we don't really have the answers, but we do have all of the avenues in great detail in which we can go down that are presented. And I think
Yeah.
that's the beauty of film. Like you never really have an answer at the end of the day, but I always try and answer the question when people ask me, whether it's about anything, sexuality of the character, or when did he start thinking he was going to do what he did, or how early
Mm-hmm.
on, or this or that. I just like to expose the duality of the other side of that question. I guess the possibilities, and I think that's a fun thing to explore, and to choose one or the other would to do a great disservice to the story in and of itself. So yeah, I think it's just presenting the layers.
Yeah, and I think it does a really good job of all the movies I think of this year. This is the movie that is really exciting to talk about with people, um,
Mm,
just because the way it's photographed. Like, my God, this is so beautiful. It's so beautifully shot. The music is incredible. I love there's like a bigness to the movie that is presented at all times, but there's also an intimacy to it at all times.
yeah.
Like the bigness of the landscape with the intimacy of the characters, I think is such an interesting, beautiful juxtaposition. And this
Mm,
this is the one where this is the movie where I could talk about this at length with so many different people, and they can all have different perspectives of maybe like what your character does or what
yeah.
Bill is thinking, and it's so gives me I'm so eager to talk to people about this movie because it is so I feel like everyone has its own relationship to what they watch.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I was curious, you know, just sort of to start, I think the reason why people are so drawn to you is because there is a lot of silence surrounding your performance. There's a lot of like an observational quality to Peter. I was curious how if you could comment on like the power of silence and how maybe you wanted to use that with him.
Oh man, I'm definitely someone that warms toward the kind of understated, nuanced, kind of subtle energy. when it comes to a character or portraying a character, as opposed to the performative, you know, screaming or crying, or, you know, as much as that is equally as, you know, compelling and beautiful to see an actor do. I really love the subtle, because I find it an equal challenge. And I find it really interesting, as opposed to being told, you know, with exclamation marks, what you should be feeling. It's so much more like ambiguous than that. And there's so much more to explore, and you're invited into the world of that character so much more. So I really love that element of Peter, and I relate to it ultimately. I guess I'm a very quiet person. You know, we both, you know, like to be alone. We both are very curious about the world and our place in it. And we both had to deal with a great sense of responsibility from a very young age, which kind of solidified us within a pseudo maturity, I guess, from a very young age too. So I related to all of that, and I really love that about him. But at the same time, of course, there's elements to him that, you know, I envy, and I almost wish I had a bit more, like, you know, his courage and his pride and his unwavering spirit in the face of adversity and judgment that other people have of him. So that's something I tried to take away from him. But yeah, I guess a great deal of thought just went into that kind of secret mission that he was on, and, you know, how much we wanted to, I put it in these words now, but when we were rehearsing, it would be like a sin to put it in these words, to even acknowledge that there was an audience watching it, to say that there was anything that I was putting down, or how much I should put down or how much I shouldn't. That would be just like the yucky words to be saying when trying to center yourself within the moment, you know. All of our work was towards centering yourself in the now, and being in the moment, and just finding Peter, and the rest would do the work, you know, hopefully for itself.
Yeah, there's sort of a, with everyone, especially with you know, Kirsten, who, you know, we've been watching for, you know, 20, 30 years. I mean, there's such a I can't think of the right word. There's a real spontaneity to all of the actors in this movie. I feel like everyone across the board, I've never seen them in a sort of, you know, I don't know, something about every single person. I feel like I've never seen them deliver a performance like this. It's so, like, I don't like saying lived in. I don't like, you know, that sort of you know, quality to a performance. But I felt like everyone in here was like such a real person, and I feel like everyone is so, I felt like I was watching something very exciting, needless to say.
That's an amazing compliment. Like, I think we couldn't look for anything more. That's really beautiful. But and in the same breath, if I may speak on behalf of the rest of the ensemble, I think that is at the hands of Jane.
Yeah.
Just from I mean, I remember I thought it was my experience alone, and I struggled with it for a little bit, to be completely transparent. But then after it was all said and done, even speaking to, you know, not just the other cast, but Ari Wagner, the cinematographer, and people that were behind the camera doing technical stuff, they had this similar experience working with Jane, which in hindsight is just so, you're like, whoa, you're in debt to her because of it. Because she elevates everything you do because of this. And what it is just like, it's what you don't expect. Like, of course we want to be comfortable and we want to be nice and safe and warm, but what she does is she, in the most calculated and safe way, plays your antagonist. And I find that, you know, she can absolutely be very innocent and playful, and then on the other side, she has this kind of force of nature vibe about her, which she can poke and prod you to invite you to explore new territories in which you may haven't before, and kind of stand up to your ego and its defiance in the narrative of being like, you know, I heard myself sometimes saying, I don't need to go to a dialect coach again. You know, I did that since I was 8 years old. Or I don't need to do the Alexander technique. You know, my technique has been working for me for all this time. That kind of unhealthy chatter, I was like, hang on a second, that's not me. I should not be thinking like that. And I'm only thinking that way because she's challenging me to elevate myself and my process, and she's coming into my world which is usually a private place where directors, you know, for the most part, knock on the door and send you letters through the door. She walks right in, and so I was really privileged for that. And in fact, now it's just completely turned the tables. Now I look for that in a collaborator.
Yeah, man,
It's so rewarding.
yeah. I have to say, sort of in a general sense, I could listen to actors talking about working with Jane Campion for like the rest of my life. It's like everyone has such like the most like beautiful singular things to say about her. I've never heard anybody, you know, talk like that at all about a director.
Yeah.
I love hearing that.
No, it's definitely an amazing singular experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. Shit. One needs to be in a Jane Campion movie.
Yes.
Like you realize like the last movie she directed before this was like Bright Star, and I was like, I know, but the performances in Bright Star are so amazing. I want to know. You're like Ben Whishaw talk about Jane Campion. And
Yes, I know.
Cornish talk about Jane Campion.
That's what I call it, the Jane Campion boot camp. I think we all call it that. It's the 2 weeks that we had with her was like an initiation process into the cult of Jane Campion. But no, she does, and the best part is she doesn't view it like this at all. Everything that I'm saying, like she challenged me or she elevated me, or she can be, you know, harsh or playful. She's just like, oh really? I didn't think I did any of that. You did it all by yourself, Kodi. I'm like, what are you talking about? Stop that.
Okay. I wanted to ask, I love the scene where you go into Rose's bedroom and she's on the bed and she's in like that pink negligee, and you have the rabbit, and you see the bottle of alcohol in the bed, and you just gently hey
God.
And I think that's such, I'm so interested about why you think Peter did that. Is it he doesn't want to, you know, maybe he doesn't confront his mother in that way before, they don't have that type of relationship. I was just so,
I think that's more in not so much about the dynamic of Peter and Rose, as much as definitely we could go into that. And there's a great sense of, you know, protection he has about her, and kind of walking on eggshells. But yeah, even getting into that is more about the other conversation of just dealing with someone that has, you know, addiction issues, or, you know, repression, or it's been abused. I'm not sure if you've experienced it directly, but, you know, it's like, yeah, you have to pick your battles, you know. You're walking on eggshells, and I can imagine in a moment like that where he just wants to show his mom, you know, the rabbit, the thing that he caught, something that is very kind of traditional in a mother and son moment. Maybe not dissecting the rabbit, but a cute moment like that. He doesn't he doesn't want to obstruct it and destroy it by confronting it, and he knows he's probably done it before. You know, he knows it's not going to get anywhere good. So in the same sense that Jesse's character just tips it out when he finds it, it's not very progressive to always confront someone that has an addiction. So it's this weird tiptoeing around it to try and help her. And I think it's actually funny that I'm saying tiptoe, because Peter's tiptoe is a very intense one at that. I mean, he does the biggest form of a tiptoe I think we ever didn't see coming. So yeah, he knew how he was going to approach it, and it definitely wasn't going to be to directly confront him.
Yeah, the biggest tiptoe. That's an understatement. There's I wanted to, the first time I saw this movie, I wanted to make sure that I saw the movie in a theater, because everyone was talking about the cinematography was, and there was like a small art house theater near my house, and it was playing. I was like the last showing that it was playing, and it was pretty full, and I went all the way near the top, so there was no one else around me. Like when I realized what was happening in the movie, like when it's basically revealed what happens, I like stood up in my chair in the middle of the movie theater. I was like, what is going on? And then right before the movie ends, and I was like, what the fuck? This is like the best.
Doesn't it really slap you across the face like that? Like, it's this kind of, like, we have to say it because it's a part of the drama of the twist. It's drawn out like in the first and second act. And I've had a lot of people, you know, think, what's going on here? Is it taking a bit of time? What is this about? It's your generic kind of Western. And then next minute, you're just kind of strung into this like momentum and sense of impending doom, and somehow something that was slow burning has you on the edge of your seat, kind of like an action movie. And then within the last quarter of the final act, it absolutely slaps you in the face, and you're like, I can't believe that just happened. Same thing happened to me in reading it, the script specifically, because it's a bit obviously shorter than the novel. So I got through it in a day, and I was on the last like 15 pages, and of course I saw something, some foul play coming. I didn't know on whose part it was going to be, but I got to the end and I was like, oh my god, I'm an idiot. I must have missed a page. I must have, got tired and kind of zoned out there like you do. I went back and then I had read it literally 3 times, and I was like, oh my god, this kid is what? Had to go right back. First time I've ever just directly gone right back to the beginning, in the same reading of the script. I went through it again, completely recontextualized, tracking Peter, tracking everyone. And I was just like, wow, that is fucking awesome. That is awesome.
I mean, because I wanted to ask about how like the plans get set in place, and part of me doesn't even want to know, but when I watched it again most recently, there's a look on your face at the very beginning of the movie, in the first interaction that you have with Benedict's character, when he lights the paper rose on fire and dunks it in the water. There's like a shot, I think it's pretty much almost from his point of view, where you're seeing him do it. The way that your face just completely drops, and I was just like, if I don't know where the inciting, plan is going to take place, I could argue that it was right here at that.
Yeah, listen, I've argued that, and then I was struck down, I think, by Benedict's thoughts and interpretation, and I don't think I ever said that again, but in the nicest way. We all have our own interpretations, but yeah, I mean, I think it's pushing it to say it was that early, but honestly, that used to be I used to say it was there, because personally, I'm someone who loves allegory and symbolism and like all of those kind of subliminal things within movies. And that in and of itself is literally the first time that we see Phil burning Rose.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so yeah, that's got to be it, or at least that's the initiation into where it goes from there. I mean, the other point is, again, arguably so, people have been like, no, like Jane, actually, I've had Benedict knock me down on that one. Jane knocked me down on this one. She said, no, I don't think it happens there. But again, like I go beyond it, and I think even though she directed, I'm like, everyone has their own interpretation. Okay.
Yeah.
I think I think at the catwalk scene when I'm looking, where first I kind of go on Phil's level, and I reel him into thinking that he's reeling me in. Oh, okay, yes. I'm like, oh, yes, Mr. Burbank, yes. And then at the very tip of it, at the end of it, he stands up, he's looking down on him, dominating, puts his hat on, says, I don't think it'll be very long now then, Phil. And then with a little smirk walks off. And you can read so much into that the second viewing. You're like, oh my God, he's literally talking about what he's going to do. Personally, I'm taking that away, because I think that speaks so much more depth and much more of an experience than if he was just saying it,
Yeah. Oof.
Movie.
You can talk about so much of this. Something else I wanted to ask is, I want to know what Peter thinks about Phil's admiration of Bronco Henry. Like, there's something, after the first time I watched it, also didn't know the like sort of the sexuality implications of the story. No one told me, which I'm glad that they didn't, because I walked out and I called one of my friends. I was like, this movie's gay. How are the dogs? It's a gay movie. And I was like, no one told me. But I was curious.
I love it.
What you think Peter's thoughts of his of Phil's admiration is for Bronco Henry, because it's like
again, like, to do it justice, that question, I have to like resurrect and bounce, off of you, the duality, the two paths that we could go down.
Yeah.
One of them, which is slightly shallower than the latter, is that Peter in being in the only person that snuck into and saw Phil in his vulnerable sacred space, you know, naked, showering himself in a very sensual, vulnerable manner, metaphorically is the only person that now knows something else about Phil that he's definitely hiding from the rest of the world in a classic masculine stone way. And we could read into it in this sense that he uses this against him, and in a way to peel back the layers of Phil to get to him to be his most vulnerable. He utilizes his sexuality and his past and his trauma against him. Cool. Okay. That's, yeah, that definitely could be a thing.
Right.
I like to see it in the way that Peter himself doesn't know how he identifies, is exploring his sexuality, and finds he's attracted to Phil the more that he hangs out with him. And Phil is obviously filling the boots of Bronco Henry in this relationship since I was his age when they met.
Yeah.
So there's that going on, and it has a great deal of evidence to go down that track. And I think it's so much more gut-wrenching. You know, that's what we want to look for here in storytelling, the spikes. It's so much more gut-wrenching, the fact that Peter has the strength to sacrifice his first and only experience of love and sensuality and the plausibility of everything that is beyond love for his mother. It's like, oh, I think that rips my guts out. Like, that's so sad. That's so powerful. That's, yeah. And I think in a perfect world, I mean, this is something that hasn't been shot down by Benedict or Jane. In a perfect world, I think if Phil didn't have to play this part from such a young age that ultimately ended up solidifying into who he was, if he wasn't so abusive to people and hostile, then maybe Phil and Peter could have had something. They could have been the new cycle of Bronco Henry and Phil. I like that more.
I do too. Yeah, throughout the whole movie, I kept thinking of you have like the first line where you say, you know, I wanted nothing more than my mother's happiness. For what kind of man I like how there's a beat between it too, where you say, for what kind of man would I be if I did not help my mother, if I did not save her. And that, I will admit that the first time that I watched the movie, that line was just like almost screaming in my ears the entire time. And then and every time that I watch the movie after that, I always like hear the line again, and I go back and I hear it. I purposely go back to like listen to the delivery of that line just because I love it so much.
Yeah, we put a lot of time into that, and Jane was in the room with me as we were recording that, just going through it again and again. But yeah, I mean, there's so much there. I mean, he's so young when he had to take on the responsibility of and that promise, I guess, almost to his father in a way, to look after his mother, and just for the unconditional love of his mother, just filling those shoes. But in the same way, you know, being so young, how could you ever know that, you know, you might want love more than being selfless? So it's like there's that crazy battle there that I think he goes through at some point, internalized in him. And I think it's brave that we don't really explore that too much. It's just left up to the audience.
Yeah. Okay. Now it's just, I love that so much is left up to us, so much. Like, I was gonna ask a question, but I think we can probably just leave it at that, because I'm haunted by the idea of why that he keeps the rope. Is that,
no, we can go there. I'll give you my answer.
Okay.
Which is like, because you know which side I'm going towards, but I think is more gut-wrenching and has more spike of emotion, is the fact that he did have something brewing with Phil. I think he kept it as like a keepsake, like in the same way that Phil, and I have this clarification from Benedict, in the same way that Phil almost knew in the last moments possibly what Peter had done to him with the rope and the cut and all that. He almost like honors him in that. He's like, I can't believe you had the balls to do that. And he still, if we're going down the track of like loving, they had this love thing, he still loves him, and he still just wants to give him the rope, because that's been the whole endeavor of this movie. That's why he was pissed at the cow, the leather going, and yeah, I mean, he wanted to really do this for this kid, for this guy. So in Phil handing it to him as like a keepsake, it's still really, it's like, oh my god, that's actually crazy. That's fully what it is for me. It's the only thing that lasted of their love through this responsibility that he had to rid him of the earth. He still finished their little love thing.
That's way more poetic and way more
beautiful.
And actually it's sort of, I was like, is that his Bronco Henry scarf?
Yes.
Like, yes, that's what I thought the whole time. I was like, that's his Bronco.
Yes.
Okay.
Like, yeah, absolutely.
So it's almost like cyclical, almost in a way. So there's one thing.
100%.
Yeah.
I look for that, to look in that other shallower side of it, that, and I think that's just, people express that just to be safe, because it's the foundation of which you can go into all these other esoteric avenues. But the other side is just not, it just doesn't go there. It just doesn't hit my heart in that way.
Yeah.
And there's not an aha moment. Like with something like that's cyclical and it goes right back to the beginning, and it's almost something that could repeat again. Like, that just makes so much sense to me. Love it.
Yeah, thank you. Good luck this season.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Amazing questions.